Defense pick up one touchdown. Kick game pick up one touchdown. We got this game won.
Okay, so welcome back to Scuchdown Report, an all-inclusive deep dive into the inner workings of the Chase Estates Fantasy Football League. I'm your host, Austin, aka A-Dub, and today with me I have two very special guests. My first guest is the COVID champion, a father of a beautiful one-year-old baby girl, a cookout king, and most importantly, he's the winner of the most recent Cul-de-sac Bowl, co-commissioner, Zac, aka Spring Daddy.
What's going on?
Welcome, man. Welcome, man.
There it is.
And then I also have with me a second special guest. I want to thank both these gentlemen for being with me on short notice. But today I have a well-traveled man. Some know him as Tennessee Tom. Some know him as TE9. But today we're just going to call him Tmac.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, of course. So welcome back to our week 2 episode. This is the second episode. I'm sorry, week 1 episode, actually. So let me just go over a few bookmarks that we're going to go through, a few chapters we're going to go through. I'll have a bookmark down below in the description if you want to skip through to something, but just to give you a basic overview of what we're going to look at. So first thing we're going to be looking at is overreactions for the week. Basically, who we think is going to do well the rest of the season, who we think is going to do bad for the rest of the season. Complete overreactions after the first week. So in there, we're going to have some guides that are dudes, some dudes who really did really well this week. And we're also going to be on Jabroni Watch looking at who flopped essentially this week. We're going to be going over some weekly MVPs for fantasy, some bench champions to see who did well on the bench there. We're going to be looking at best and worst managers effectively. We have a special segment called Pulled Receipts, which is a surprise to both these gentlemen. I'm interested to get their reactions from it. And then most importantly, we have the Zac vs. Nugget recap, which is going to feature the Damian Harris versus Ramondre Stevenson battle. Sneak peek, no one cares. And then we're going to do a week 1 recap of all the matchups we had, and then we're going to be looking forward to week 2 with all the matchups. And we might have a college sports segment at the end here where we talk a little bit about college football and see who we like and who we don't like going into week 2. Actually, week 3 of college sports, excuse me. So to get started, first we're going to look at is some overreactions from the first week. I have a few bullet points here, but feel free, guys, to jump in if you have anything that really stood out to you. So the first bullet point I have here is the Patriots may be the worst team in the NFL.
Yeah, they looked about as putrid as possible. Mac Jones is not the answer, and Belichick is. I think he's done.
That's bold.
Yeah, I heard they were calling for his head, but I think Miami has their number over the past years.
The problem with the Patriots. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tmac.
Tua is 4-0. I think against Belichick was basically just since Brady's left, but that is an ever-growing stat that looks worse and worse.
Yeah, I mean, from the outside looking in, Tua didn't look very good either, if I'm being honest with you. They had a decent game, but it's similar to the Washington Commanders, in that we basically poured our hearts out to beat the Jaguars, right? And that's kind of how it looked for the Dolphins. They beat the Patriots, but I don't know if the Dolphins are going to turn out to be much either, but for sure the Patriots look like they are about to take a dump this year, you know?
Yeah, they seem terrible. This is just like an overarching Patriots statement too. I am sick of Matthew Slater being a captain for that team. He is like the 12-year All-Pro special team player, and I don't see how he gets a roster spot every year.
He's a Belichick guy. I'm assuming he's white.
No, he is not white. He is he only plays special teams, and he's been on the team for 14 seasons and is a captain, recurring captain. But that is pretty wild.
Yeah,
it is like a high school thing that the Patriots just won't go away from.
I think the grand scheme of the Patriots in terms of fantasy is you kind of just don't want anyone on their team in terms of fantasy. They are definitely going to be fantasy irrelevant and possibly NFL irrelevant this year.
Yeah, I think they'll come in last in the AFC East.
Yeah, so the flip side of that, the second bullet point I have here is the Bills look like they're the best team in the NFL this week. They played early on Thursday night, and I wanted to overreact after watching just one game, but after watching all the teams, they looked like the most well-polished, Super Bowl-ready team of anyone I watched this week.
Yeah, I agree. Josh Allen just looks better than everyone else. I don't know if anyone can really stop him. And Mahomes,
yeah,
he got beat by the defense.
I think the Bills beat a really good Rams team too. I mean, they won the Super Bowl last year, so
for sure.
That's an impressive win. I guess Mahomes and the Chiefs looked insane.
Yeah.
But I don't believe in Arizona all that much. So
same. But yeah, I mean, there's a few standouts. I mean, Josh Allen, like you said, clearly looked like he's in the running for the MVP this year. I can't see anyone else really. I mean, I can see a few people challenging him, but Mahomes from right now, 5 touchdowns.
400 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Yeah,
so
it's fair.
I think they're 1 and 2 for sure.
And so. Stephon Diggs, I wrote these notes after the first game, and I put Stephon Diggs maybe the best wide receiver this year, but then Justin Jefferson played, so I think I may have to retract that statement. We'll get to him later when we talk about the Vikings. So the next thing I have here, this may be a little punny, but I had the 49ers look to be unlucky, and then I have panic at the Frisco. That would be my headline there. That was one of the most ugliest games I think I've ever seen. So I don't want to take too much away from it, but the standouts for me from that game were Elijah Mitchell got injured, and like, are they just going to run the ball to the Super Bowl? Like, who are they going to pass to? I mean, granted, Brandon Ayuk played for 98% of the snaps that game, so he's looking fine for fantasy, but outside of Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, I don't know.
They got to bring Jimmy G back, I feel like, back into the starting position there. They want to have a passing game at least.
That Bears team's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And Ray McLeod the third had a catch for the Niners, who, I mean, that should probably just
that spells everything.
Everything.
Granted, though, it was like a sludge fest. Like, it was super rainy. It looked gross. Like, they couldn't really get anything started. Yeah. So maybe they'll come back next week. Kittle may play. They may look better. But getting into the next game.
That's true. They were missing Kittle as well. So.
Yeah, Kittle was out, and, you know, it was in Chicago. Chicago had home field advantage. Maybe it was just like a one-off, but I don't know. From the outside looking in.
The weather was terrible too, right?
Yeah, it looked terrible.
Yeah, it was like dumping rain.
Yeah, they had a game like that against Washington a few years ago where we almost beat them. So anything can really happen when it's torrential downpours, you know? So next on my list here, in big, bold letters, I have the Cowboys stink. Emphasis on stink, dude. They are terrible. Oh, my God.
Dak might be out for the year.
Yes, that too. That just happened today.
Yeah.
Maybe Jimmy G goes to the Cowboys. Handsome Jimmy G on the Cowboys. You never know.
I mean, that could be a move. I think Dak is having surgery on his thumb.
Yeah.
The Cowboys, they're the only team in the NFL in week 1 not to score a touchdown.
That's a great stat.
Which is, pretty bad. Is
that the same injury that Russell Wilson had last year?
Probably similar.
Maybe. Yeah.
Probably similar. But yeah, dude, it was a great day of football, and then I got to Sunday Night Football, and it was probably the worst game of the day. Like, it was so boring to watch.
That was a tough game. The Cowboys have never beat Brady too, so I thought they might be a little more fired up and get the first like upset of Brady, probably in the last chance they'll play against him.
No,
and nothing. They just did not show up.
Micah Parsons was ready to play, but besides that, the Cowboys were a flop all around. CeeDee Lamb is plummeting in stock right now. And then getting to the next game, so I had the Vikings look brand new. And I the only thing I have here is just Justin Jefferson looks like he's going to be better than Cooper Kupp last year. That's a incredible overreaction, but I mean, in the first 2 or 3 minutes, he had 2 touchdowns, and I was like, this is absurd, you know?
Yeah. I mean, Jefferson's, I think, almost a safe bet as, if not the best receiver, he's got to be 1, 2, or 3. I still don't trust Kirk Cousins though. He'll choke and mess up at some point in the year. So
I think Kirk Cousins may be my second least liked quarterback, right after Tony Romo, being a Washington fan. So
yeah,
I don't believe in him either, but it just seems like Jefferson's going to do well regardless. And then
I will say though, like that Packers team though, I think they lost like 31-3 against the Saints to open the season last year.
They did,
and then they ended up making it to the NFC Championship game, or
yeah. So
they were like
they went on a run and they did nasty. However, I do have I have here noted that the Packers look like they're struggling all around. I mean, my two biggest takeaways is AJ Dillon might be their RB1 on that team after watching that whole game. And I think their running backs are going to be their best wide receivers. And I don't think that's a recipe for winning, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, their strength is Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball, and that's not going to happen this year.
Yeah, them losing Devontae was pretty tough for them.
Sammy Watkins is old. I mean, Randall Cobb's like 48. He's still on that team.
They're all over the hill.
Yeah, AJ Dillon looks like he's going to have a good year, though. I mean, I have later on, I forget the exact analogy I used, but I said Aaron Jones is pretty much like a Walmart version of Kareem Hunt now. You know, like, he's no longer the Aaron Jones he used to be, and Kareem Hunt is nasty. That's another point I have later.
Yeah, the running backs on Cleveland are both nasty.
Yeah, they just keep continuing doing it. So the next game I have are the Eagles. I said I think the Eagles are going to run away with the NFC East. The NFC East just looks terrible. Granted, the Giants did win. The Commanders did win, but, you know, they weren't necessarily great wins. I guess the Giants, you could say, was a great win, but the few points I have from that game are A.J. Brown looks like he's in the perfect system for him. Like, Jalen Hurts is going to feed him the ball, and he's going to have so many points this year. And then I also have Jalen Hurts is probably going to be a top quarterback without throwing the ball. He had no touchdowns this week, and he was still in the top 5 of quarterbacks, which is insane.
That's a good stat.
I didn't even see. Did he have a lot of rushing yards?
Yeah, it was, and he also had like 2 rushes that like 90, stopped on the 1 yard line, you know, like, so you could add more.
90 rushing yards.
The Eagles had 4 different guys who scored a rushing touchdown, which is pretty rare in the NFL. I mean, the Lions are the Lions, so I'd take that first game.
That's true.
It's sad because the Commanders play them next week, and I know they're going to beat us. It's a trap game. We're never going to win that game, you know. The Fighting Dan Campbells are going to beat us. I just know it. But
DeAndre Swift looked really good.
He did. DeAndre Swift might be one of the best running backs in the league. I think he's just on a team that's, I don't know, man. They're just the Lions, you know, like.
Yeah.
But
that team is not good.
So staying in the NFC East, getting to that Giants game, I have Saquon is back. He looked like regular Saquon.
If he can stay healthy, I mean, he is the real deal.
Dude, he had a pitch play on the left side where he just kind of got outside, and he looked exactly like he did in Penn State. And I was just like, oh, shit, he's going to be good, you know?
Yeah, I was watching that game here in Nashville because it's like, obviously Tennessee's the home team. Yeah. And everyone was psyched at halftime, and Saquon like single-handedly won that game in the second half.
Yeah.
He had 190 yards, and he looked as like fast as he did in the fourth quarter as he did in the first quarter, which he was like John and chippy and looked like
he's
Saquon, so.
he's ready. I don't think he sustains that enough to get the Giants anywhere, but I think in terms of fantasy, he's back to being one of the best running backs. That's an overreaction. We'll see how that goes, but I mean, on the eye test alone, he looks nasty.
Also, new head coach. Got the dub, going for 2 in the fourth quarter.
I loved that.
I love that.
Coming from the Bills too, right? Was he the offensive coordinator there?
I love that. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I do think the Titans will be in the AFC playoffs and like, you know, challenging, I guess, the Chiefs or the Chargers for like one of the better teams in the AFC. So that's an impressive win on the road for the Giants.
I think the Colts are in arguably the worst division in football. Arguably. The worst division in football, so I think it's pretty easy to get out of that division. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a weak division.
So I have one stat that really kind of painted the picture for me on the New York Giants. There was 20 total pass attempts, and 8 of them went to Saquon Barkley. and he's their running back. So he is the sole driving force of that offense. And I feel like as long as he stays active, he's going to be disgusting this year. So moving to the other NFC East, obviously it's a little NFC East bias here, but I have Carson Wentz as the most random quarterback in the league, and I had 4 heart attacks watching the Commanders play the Jacksonville Jaguars yesterday. I didn't know what I was in for when I originally signed up for the Carson Wentz experience, but let me tell you something. I went from hating him to loving him in literally 30 seconds, and I have no hope going into next week or the rest of the season with him.
Dude, I don't know. The Commanders have a pretty easy front end of the schedule.
We do.
They play the Lions. Then you get like the very injury-laden Cowboys.
Yeah.
You get the Bears, like all in the first 6 weeks. So
this is going to age so poorly. We're going to lose 3 or 4 of those games. And I'm going to be sitting here talking about how Carson Wentz needs to be out and how I forget the kid's name from North Carolina, but I want him to be our starter eventually.
Sam Howell.
Sam Howell, man. Sign him up, man.
Dude, Sam Howell is like a Blaine Gabbert from Missouri a couple years ago. Like he gets drafted in the first round or whatever. I think he actually got picked in like the 5th round.
We took him in the 5th.
Loved him. Yeah, but like I don't know why. I don't know why he's in NFL, like just based on mechanics. But like he doesn't show me NFL talent.
I just know there's going to come a point in time in the season where I'm going to be hammering, like, get Carson Wentz out of Washington. I can see it coming. I was already there. I was there once he threw 2 picks. Like, I was just like, this is insane. We were already up. But, okay, I don't want to jabber about the Commanders. I'm sorry. I could do that forever. But just know we have a young wide receiver corp that did actually pretty well. Antonio Gibson might be the best steal of I think it was the 7th or 8th round. He looks like he's going to be decent this year. So getting to the next game, or the same game actually, I want to talk about Travis Etienne and James Robinson because that is an interesting dynamic they have going on there. I drafted Travis Etienne, or I'm sorry, that's in my other league. Nico has Travis Etienne in our league, and he started strong, but by the end of the game, it was obvious that James Robinson's still the best running back there. And in parentheses, I have Travis Etienne is more of a J.D. McKissick than he is a DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, looking at the stats, it just looks like maybe he didn't get enough burn. I don't know. 4 attempts for 47 yards.
He was doing okay in the beginning. Obviously, I watched the game. Who the hell cares about a Commanders versus Jaguars game besides me? But I watched the first half, and he looked okay. He may be all right, but I don't think he's the 1st or 2nd round talent where people are drafting him. I think it's a huge reach, similar to a lot of other running backs we'll get to.
I mean, to Zach's point, though, he did touch the ball like 6 total times and gained 70 yards.
Yeah, like 10 yards a touch.
He averaged 12 yards a carry and 9 yards a reception.
He dropped a touchdown pass, and they pulled him after that. So he had like a walk-in touchdown that he dropped, and they kind of pulled him.
He did have a fumble too.
He did.
He didn't lose, but he did fumble.
So the next segment we're going to get into is called Fantasy MVPs, where we go over the best players at their position this week. So we talked about this guy before, but at quarterback, the QB1 for the week was Patrick Mahomes, who had 34.9 points. He had 360 passing yards and 5 touchdowns, which he looked like regular Mahomes.
Yeah, he single-handedly kept me in my fantasy matchup with 35 points by himself.
They pull him in the 4th quarter too? Yeah, he could have gotten a little more points, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. He looks prime for a good year, like every year, but
I think they pulled him. I'm not totally sure.
Well,
what's crazy about his stat line too is he was 30 of 39, like a 77% completion percentage.
Yeah, I read a crazy stat. I read a crazy stat, and I'm misquoting it, but it was similar to this. It was that the Chiefs ran 60-something plays, and 30-something of those were first downs. Like they were dominating that game. So that was Patrick Mahomes for you.
They had 33 first downs in that game, which is like they're playing kind of like Big 12 college football. To score 44 points in the NFL is rare.
Yeah.
So.
But that was Patrick Mahomes. Our RB1 for the week was Saquon Barkley, who we talked about earlier, but I'll read his stat line again. So he had 29.4 points, 164 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown, 6 receptions for 30 yards, and a 2-point conversion. he did it all last week. I mean, we already said it, but he looked like an RB1.
And I think Jim traded for him last season.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which looks like, I said it in the last episode, but I was like, if Saquon and Christian McCaffrey can do what they're supposed to, his team looks scary. And Christian McCaffrey may turn out to be okay, he may not, but Saquon looks like a good return on investment. So RB2 this week, and a lot of these are on Tom's team, actually. Keeping his team afloat, RB2 for the week was Jonathan Taylor with 25.5 points, which is 161 rushing yards with 1 rushing touchdown, 4 receptions for 14 yards. And I watched that game too, and it just seemed like it was average for him. Like he just coasts to 161 yards. It didn't even seem like he was, like Saquon Barkley looked like he was balling out. Jonathan Taylor just looked like he was running the ball, and he still had 161 yards.
Just expected to do that.
Yeah. I think they were losing 20-3 or 20-6, like going into the fourth quarter, and he only had like 8 points.
Yeah.
And then they just decided to like, oh, we're playing the Texans and we should show up, and he immediately get like 20 points in the fourth quarter.
He's going to be gross. That was an amazing performance from him, RB2. And then for wide receiver 1, we talked about this guy before, but Justin Jefferson with the most points total at 34.9 of any player. He had 184 yards receiving on 9 receptions and 2 touchdowns, and that could have been way more.
Yeah. I mean, he is nasty. I went up against him. And I was in my head saying, I just hope that my 2 best players can put up as much as he does by himself.
Zach,
cancel him out.
I was saying the same thing watching it. I was like, if Justin Jefferson single-handedly beats Zach, like we're never going to hear the end of this.
Yeah. No, I was at one point I was thinking that. So
yeah. Well, he had a great week. He's going to continue to have a great week.
It was like funny this first week. All the expected wide receivers like
did well.
Got tons of points. Like Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Diggs, they all had 20 plus points, which usually like someone busts.
And most of the running backs didn't though. Like players like Dalvin Cook or
Derrick Henry.
A lot of those like middle
Najee
round.
Harris,
exactly.
Najee Harris, and Eckler.
Yep. RB
They all
early.
scored 10 points or less.
Yeah, it was underwhelming for sure. So wide receiver 2, who you just spoke about, was Cooper Kupp, 25.3 yards. He was in the first game. He was just getting fed the ball. He had 128 yards receiving, 1 touchdown on 13 receptions. He was targeted 19 times. That's insane.
Yeah, Matt Stafford didn't have a good game, if I remember correctly. So it could have been a lot more yards.
Yeah, I had Allen Robinson in that game, and I was, every time the ball left his hands, I just knew it was going to Cooper Kupp. And hopefully Allen Robinson gets some share later on, but for right now, it looks like it's the Cooper Kupp show in LA. And
he had a big game, 13 catches. Yeah, I have him on like 15 targets. So I mean, he's getting open a lot, and the ball's obviously going to him. So that's a testament to how good of a route runner I think he is.
Against a disgusting defense, by the way. I think I had the Bills. Besides the Steelers, who had a freak game, I think the Bills might have been the best playing defense. The Steelers had the most points, but I think the Bills were looking like the best defense, and Cooper Kupp still got 128 yards receiving.
Yeah.
So getting to tight ends, a heavily debated position group in our league. The tight end 1 for the week was Travis Kelce, as expected, 22.1 points on 121 yards, 1 touchdown on 8 receptions. So he also was he benefited from that Patrick Mahomes stat line, obviously, but he looks like he is picking up right where he left off.
Yeah, I think I drafted him first round, and it paid off. It's nice to get a good stat line from a tight end because there really aren't many that can do that,
Yeah, we'll talk about it later.
Consistently.
We'll talk about it later, but there's a humongous drop off after like the first 3 tight ends, like dramatically.
Yeah. Even after the first one, I think it's kind of Kelce and everyone else.
Yeah.
Kittle didn't play. I don't know, Darren Waller, but that's not. I don't trust him like a year.
Yeah, my keeper did not do the best, by the way.
Yeah.
Who'd you keep at tight end?
Mark Andrews.
Mark
right?
Andrews. We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
We have some.
right.
I'm pulling some receipts later, so we'll talk about Mark Andrews. But he did not fare well as one of the keepers. So and then I also have the best flex player. So this is everything else besides those RB 1-2, wide receiver 1-2. It was Devontae Adams with 25.1 points. He had 141 yards and 1 touchdown on 10 receptions. He was also getting fed the ball too. I mean, he's going to be. I mean, I didn't think he was going to be that good in Oakland, or I'm sorry, in Las Vegas, but he is. He's getting fed the ball.
You know, the roommates reunite because
Seriously.
Carr and Adams were at Fresno State together.
Yeah. Seriously.
Did they lose though to the Chargers?
They did. They ended up losing, and Carr looked average, honestly, but similar to
didn't play
Matt
well.
Stafford. Similar to Matt Stafford, he was just feeding the ball to Devontae Adams. You know, it honestly looked
Yeah.
like Aaron Rodgers again.
Yeah, I wonder if a lot of those catches were they're trying to get back in the game
Yeah.
Yeah,
later in the third and fourth quarter.
It was. He was feeding what's his name too, Darren Waller, but it was mainly all to Devontae Adams. I think Hunter Renfrow loses out this year. He was pretty good, but I don't think he's going to get the target share he was getting last year. All right.
It's crazy that he's even in the NFL.
All right, so this is the boring part of the MVPs, but for defense, I have the Steelers. They had 23 points, 4 interceptions, 1 fumble recovery, 1 blocked kick, 7 sacks, and 1 interception touchdown. A freak game, but honestly, they looked good too.
They had 7 sacks.
7 sacks, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a crazy stat line. And TJ Watt left, I think, in the third.
Yeah, I think he tore his pectoral muscle. Is out for probably this season.
That sucks. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I saw that at the end of it's like in the last 2 minutes of the game, right?
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah. Well, actually, I guess he's getting more opinions.
They haven't
and
confirmed.
If he
Okay.
doesn't need surgery, he could return in 6 weeks. So let me rephrase that.
That still stinks, but they look disgusting. I mean, they were playing the Bengals, who is a great team, or who we think is going to be a great team. They looked okay. They're definitely better than average. And it was just turnover after turnover that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 picks for Burrows is a little tough.
That's rough. I was mad at Carson for 2, you know.
Yeah.
And then, so rounding up the MVPs, I have the kicker, none other than Younghoe Koo. Shout out to Jerry in the background. Younghoe Koo had 19 points. He had 2 50-yard kicks, 1 40-yard kick, 1 30-yard kick, and 2 pats. That's a hell of a stat line for a kicker. So
That is pretty solid.
shout out to Younghoe. I hate kickers, by the way, and that's so random, but shout out to Younghoe Koo. So this next segment is called Bench Champion. So we're going to go through a few people that were on people's benches that just absolutely tore it up and should have probably been in the starting lineup. After that, we'll get to the manager evaluations and how many points were left on the bench. But for right now, we're going to go through some bench champions. So the first bench champion I have is Michael Thomas. Jim had him on his bench. He had 20 points. He started T. Higgins instead of Michael Thomas, which I can't blame him for that. Now, after watching week 1, we know Michael Thomas looks like he's Michael Thomas, you know?
Yeah.
T. Higgins went out with a concussion, but he only had 3.7 points, so that was kind of a big swing.
Yeah. I think Jim still got the win, but
He did.
it was tight.
Yeah. So second, we have Christian Kirk. I don't know if anyone saw that coming. I mean, he did get big money in the offseason, so maybe we should have seen that coming. But he had 14.7 points, and that was on Kyle's team, by the way. Kyle had him on the bench, and Kyle instead started CeeDee Lamb, who we all know how that went. 3.9 points. That's abysmal. But I can't blame him for that. I think all of us would have probably started CeeDee Lamb over Christian Kirk, but still, got to throw it out there because that was a big swing. He definitely could have beat me had he started Christian Kirk over CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, you can't pull the trigger on that though. Which sucks, but
Right. But I mean that's the running theme with all these is kind of like, of course you didn't see it coming, but it's nice to point it out, you know.
yeah.
So third, I have James Robinson with 19.4 points. He was on Tmac's bench actually. To David Montgomery's 6.5. David Montgomery played in that sludge fest, and James Robinson, like I said earlier, looked like he's their bell cow. I don't even know if that's the term you want to use, but he looks like he's their RB1 in Jacksonville. Again, that's a toss-up between David Montgomery and James Robinson. I don't think anyone would have started him, but maybe moving forward, now there's like a debate on who you start, you know?
Yeah, since I manage that team, I wish I started him as flex instead of Elijah Mitchell, who obviously went out. But just in general, that was like, I think I switched it day of, and Elijah Mitchell got me 4. I mean, Robinson had 19 on my bench, and I ended up losing by 4 points.
Yeah, I mean, we're being Monday morning quarterbacks, so it's hard to say after the fact, but you know.
Yeah, like Nico left a guy on his bench with 15 too, so we could have probably been both scoring more. But retrospect, James Robinson's 2 touchdowns would have won me the week.
Yeah, this might be the dumbest one out of all of them. It's the Steelers defense, who Mike left on his bench. They had 25 points, and ironically, he has the second best defense in the Bills with 17. So I'm not gonna say much about that, but I have to point that out, that he left the Steelers D on the bench. Maybe he has a debate moving forward who he starts. Maybe not. We'll see. Maybe it'll be matchup based.
Interesting move, holding 2 defenses though.
Yeah, and they happen to be the 2 best ones.
That's actually more surprising than anything. The 1 and 2. He got like 50 points out of defense. Maybe we can start these at the flex position.
Hey, that may be a thing.
Don't want to be hypocritical, but I did pick up a defense, and I do have 2 on my team right now.
Fair enough.
I also have 2.
But I will be dropping one. I don't think he can drop one of those, right?
I mean, at this point, no. He's basically playing keep away from us by having the 2 best defenses.
Exactly.
We'll see how the Steelers pan out. I think that was a freak accident the first week. We'll see how that goes. But I think the Bills will be gross.
7 sacks and 4 turnovers
that's insane.
Not gonna happen every week, but
right.
Yeah.
Oh, and Watt might be out.
Yeah.
Like we said earlier.
So next I have Kareem Hunt, who had 21 points. He was on Matty Will's bench. He started Derrick Henry, who had 8.2. Again, you can't fault him for this, but Kareem Hunt should probably start for him moving forward because.
Who do you have in his flex?
I don't have it pulled up. Can you guys look it up for me?
Yep, I'll pull it up. Because he does have Dalvin Cook.
He had Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, I mean.
And he had a good game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I put Derrick Henry.
Jalen Waddle instead of Allen Robinson at receiver, and then Kareem Hunt at flex would have won him the game.
Yeah. So next I have Jarvis Landry, who was on the bench with 14.9 points to Darnell Mooney's 1.3. That was a big bust. That was on Beaton's team there. And Jarvis Landry, take that with a grain of salt. He may not do it moving forward. I don't know. The Saints looked okay. You never know. But Darnell Mooney, I mean, he was like the trendy, sexy pick to start, and I just don't trust anyone on the Bears.
There was a lot of hype on him this year, but week 1.
Yeah, Darnell Mooney doesn't scream security to me, but we'll see how that goes moving forward. So next, Zach, I got to call you out. You had Cordarrelle Patterson on the bench with 21.1 points to Adam Thielen's 5.1. And I can fault you for that because I do think I would have started Cordarrelle over Thielen. I'm just a Thielen hater, but maybe moving forward, you have a debate on that.
I didn't even have Thielen in. I had Chris Godwin, and then there was some looming injury for Godwin, and he was playing the night game, so I wanted to just get somebody playing.
I think I can defend that Thielen start.
Okay.
Everyone's gonna double team Jefferson, or there's all the attention's gonna be on Jefferson.
Yeah.
Thielen's been a steady 100 catch receiver for the last 3 years and is always underrated.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my problem with the week-long build-up to the fantasy matchup. I overanalyze these flex positions. I think that's why I have 2 defenses. I picked up the Browns and started them over the Bucks because I thought the matchup would be better. And then the Bucks scored 13 and the Browns had 5, and I lost by 4. And I should have just left it, but I don't know.
I did the same thing. I picked up the Commanders.
Yeah.
Well, and I picked up the Commanders defense 5 minutes before kickoff because they're playing the Jags.
Right.
And
you get so caught up in the matchups and the projections that you second guess your initial thought, and then it backfires.
Well, it's week 1, so I can't blame you guys. No one knew anything that was going to happen, so it's just you're all in your head. But I think now we have a somewhat of a picture of what to expect. And then this is probably going to be Zach's favorite part of the bench champions here. We're going to go double Nugget on it, on you guys. So Nugget started. Well, let me say who he should have started. Nugget should have started Jameis Winston, who had 20.5 points. Instead, he started Dak Prescott. Fart Prescott had 3.2 points. Probably the worst quarterback performance of the week.
Love it.
Yeah. So that was. I mean, Nugget wasn't helping himself. He also had 3 players, I think, that averaged for 2.1 points or something like that. I had the stat later, but Jameis Winston would have been a solid start. Can't fault him for that. But again, I mentioned to him in the last podcast that I thought Dak Prescott was going to be terrible this year. And he was like, oh, you never know. Dak could be good. And I was like, so I'm gonna pat my back on that one. I saw that one coming. I'm an avid Cowboys hater, so I had some bias.
I gotta say, like for Zach, Nuggets team had 6 players that scored under 5 points.
Yeah.
And without Justin Jefferson, he would have scored 38 as a team.
Yeah.
Dude,
I know.
I actually think Nuggets roster looked like Deebo Samuels and Justin Jefferson. I thought was probably the best receiver combo going into the season for anyone. So I did not see that.
Dude, everyone
coming for him.
Everyone called me out when I put him as a toilet bowl champion, but I think he's headed there. Well,
I think we got off to a bad start on Thursday with Cam Akers going for nothing, and Zach just like leaning into that.
Oh yeah.
I think his team was just kind of cursed for week 1.
He was very quiet because he knew that his team was not going to perform this week.
We will get to Nuggets team later with the Zach versus Nugget matchup evaluation because
I don't
he has. Oh no, not at all. He has a lot of interesting players. But yeah, his second bench champion was Khalil Herbert. Believe it or not, was a bench champion for him, who had 10.8 points. And ironically, he could have started that over either of his running backs. So between Cam Akers and Tony Pollard, he had 3.2 points. So Khalil Herbert almost tripled both of his running backs' point output that week. So I can't call him out for that. I think Tony Pollard was a sexy pick last minute, probably a panic pick after Akers. But I think Khalil Herbert's going to end up. I think I said this last podcast. I think Khalil Herbert's going to end up starting over David Montgomery by the end of the year. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, Nuggets running backs after the Cam Akers blunder look pretty bad.
Yeah. J.K. Dobbins is hurt too.
All around.
But J.K. Dobbins was out. Stevenson, though, on the Patriots is not reliable. Khalil Herbert's your best option.
Yeah.
That could make for a long season.
So he was his bench champion, which I wanted to add that in because that's funny to me. But so to wrap all this up, I have something called manager evaluations where I kind of did all the points on how many points were left on the bench had you started your ideal lineup, how many more points you could have had. I did this before the Monday night game, so I might be missing a few points here. But so coming in as the worst manager of the week, I have Matty Will, who left 31.4 points on the bench. He would have won had he started the best team. That's by far the most, by the way. No one's even close. Second, I have Colton, who had a good week, honestly, but he barely lost. He left 28.1 points on the bench, so a lot of points out there that could have been changed. And then third place, where do I have third place? Oh, sorry. Third place actually is Jim. Jim left 25.7 points on the bench, which Jim had a good week too. So that's just an emphasis on how good his team is, that he had a good week and he had 25 points on the bench. And then in terms of the best, most effective managers, the third best manager was Mike, who only left 10.3 points on the bench. Dan left 7.5 points on the bench. And sorry to toot my own horn, but I started a perfect roster, which isn't saying much because my bench was terrible. I think I mentioned this, but this is this crazy stat. But had Brandon McManus hit that kick, I would have been literally tied with Kyle. Like literally tied, and it would have gone to the bench. And I had like 4 points on my bench or something stupid like that. Like, so it's like a gift and a curse. Like, yeah, I started a great team, but like that could have bit me in the ass, you know?
Yeah.
Question.
Yes.
If you are playing. I mean, obviously ties are very rare in fantasy, but you could just hold 2 quarterbacks really on your team and get those bench points, right?
Yeah, but I mean, the odds of also our scoring is like on a point base, so it's like 25.6. Like,
yes.
So the odds of you tying are like astronomical, you know, like.
Yeah.
But it almost was. Had he hit that 60-yard field goal, that would have been 5 more points, and we'd have been on the dot, smack dab, the same point total, which is crazy.
Is that our tiebreaker? Like, it goes to your bench points?
Yeah, it does.
I have to confirm, but
typically that's what it is.
That's what it sounds right.
And then just so you guys know your point total here, Tmac left 18.7 points on the bench, and Zac left 16. And I'll go through everyone else's real quick. Nico had 12.4. Kyle had 10.8. Beaton had 13.6. So that was everyone's point total left on the bench, barring the Monday night game. Like I said, I did this before I got here to film. But, oh, yeah, I forgot Nugget. That's who was the third worst. Nugget left 27 points on the bench. So on top of not having a great starting lineup, he also left the majority of his points on the bench. So this next segment, I'm very excited. I'm testing it out. It has a running title right now. For right now, I'm going to call it Pulled Receipts. This is a section where I'm going to pull my favorite things from the group chat and get everyone's insight on the repercussions of what happened after the text message. So Tmac has, I believe, 2 of the 5 here. So we're going to start off with Tmac's first 2, and then I'll let you, the floor is yours afterwards. So the first one I have is from Tmac, and it reads, George Kittle and Darren Waller reaches from the guy who kept Mark Andrews, GTFO.
You know, see, I didn't keep a tight end, so I thought drafting Kittle was a pretty safe move because I needed a good tight end. I mean, he didn't play week 1. There's a long season ahead of us. Maybe he pans out, but yeah, it didn't age all that well. We'll say Mark Andrews didn't have a stellar week 1 either. Well,
let me throw some numbers at you real quick because I have pulled the receipts on that too. Mark Andrews had 7.7 points, 5 receptions for 52 yards on 7 targets, a mediocre performance to say the least. I do think he has a good season, but I do understand your point of a little hypocrisy there. Keeping someone who isn't George Kittle. Pretty much, if you don't have George Kittle, why? Or I mean, not George Kittle. I'm sorry, Travis Kelce. Why are you even bothering? Which may be the case. And then, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I guess my tight end reach. It was a slight reach for Kittle. I'll admit that. For
reference, this is the first week. But for reference, George Kittle had 0 points. He was injured. We'll put an asterisk next to that one. And Darren Waller had 9.9 points. So 4 receptions on 79 yards. 6 targets, so better than Mark Andrews at 2 rounds later. So that was the tight end recap there. We'll keep that a running tally there to see how that goes. And the next receipt I have pulled is also from Tmac actually, and this reads, I have hot takes ready for you, not only on college football front, like how you think Trey Lance brings everyone's level of play down significantly, but you got Jim as your champion with Lance at quarterback. I got questions. So, real quick before you say anything, let me just read Trey Lance's stat line for the week. So he had 9.9 points, 13 for 28 on 164 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Granted, it was the sludge fest, but that is his stat line for week 1.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. I think Trey Lance, I agree with you, is not a starter in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's not going to last as the quarterback. But you picked Jim to win the league, and he has Trey Lance.
So I did, and I also have his point total here. I think he had 111.5 points this week, barring the Monday night game. He had a potential for 137.2, which would have been the second most points in the league, behind 1 point behind Dan. So he is in the running for one of the better teams, even with Trey Lance, and I think there's room for him to improve. His quarterback, Kirk Cousins, is on his bench, who looks like he's going to be fine this year. You can run out and risk your life with Carson Wentz if you want to. Trey Lance is replaceable, but everyone else on his team looks like he's ready for a run, you know?
Yeah, no, his running backs are solid. And, I mean, he got hardly anything out of T. Higgins.
Yep.
But Pittman
And Michael
showed up.
Thomas.
He seems like he's going to be legit. Michael Thomas might actually be back.
Yeah,
But I was more commenting on, I think Trey Lance is not good.
I agree.
And then you picked Jim to win it all.
Okay, that is a little bit of hypocrisy, but I do think Jim can fix his spots, especially at quarterback. I think his other two weaknesses are tight end and defense, which can be fixed on the waiver wire, no problem. You know what I mean? So I feel like the core of his team is the best out of anyone, and I think he's going to do well this year.
I would agree with the core team.
So the third pulled receipt I have is from Kyle, and it says, I'm just looking forward to the Ramondre Stevenson versus Harris tracker throughout the year. Probably the most exciting part of the Pats season. I think he might have been spot on. I think that might be the most exciting thing about the Patriots this year. And seeing that the Patriots stink, I'm going to read off their two stat lines. No one cares besides Patriot fans. If you don't care about the Patriots, skip to this next section. Damian Harris had 6.8 points on 48 rushing yards, 2 receptions for 10 yards and 3 targets, to Ramondre Stevenson's 3.7 points on 25 rushing yards, 2 receptions, 2 yards on 2 targets. So, small win for Zac. Okay, he beat Nugget in that regard. I think a big loss for the Patriots in general.
It's funny how I was not rooting for Harris all last year to make the top 12 running back.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm on Team Harris.
He'll be all right. They'll be all right. I don't know if they're going to be fantasy standouts, but he'll be all right, you know, but that's a boring battle to say the least.
I'm holding on to him so I can trade the Patriots running back to Nugget later on in the season.
Yeah, I think for sure Ramondre Stevenson at the end of the year proves to be the biggest reach of the draft.
He was drafted before Harris.
He was drafted before.
Let's remember that.
He was drafted for a lot of players. We'll look back. All right, sure. So next I have from Kyle one more. He says, Austin, we need a full podcast series around the Nugget versus Zac rivalry. Then another trying to figure out how I made the playoffs last year. And while I'll get to his playoff run probably at a later date, this is a perfect segue into the Nugget versus Zac week 1 review. Zac, do you want to take the floor?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to start talking shit. I hold a good record against Nugget, being 14-7 coming into the week. I am now 15-7 after beating him this week. I know his running backs didn't show up, which was nice. But yeah, I own Nugget.
Yeah, I think my favorite pulled receipt from the week is this last final one from Zac, and it says, I can't wait to talk about how playing Nugget in fantasy is like pitching to Bruce Moniz. I think that was a standout from the group chat. And my takeaways from the Zac versus Nugget matchup was it was an interesting matchup. There were some interesting stats pulled, like you said, 14-7. I think you got the better of Nugget over the history of the league. But I should mention that Nugget does have significantly more championships than you. I want to go to bat for Nugget since he's not here, since I know that's probably would be his retort to you.
Yes.
And
he does have 3. He has 3. I did some research and looked at all his titles.
Uh-huh.
One of them, he made the playoffs at 6-7.
Okay.
I don't know if he made the rules so he could make the playoffs like that, but
so are you calling him the Tom Brady of fantasy?
He might be the Roger Goodell of fantasy.
I was hoping I could bait you into that one because Nugget's gonna love being called the Tom Brady of fantasy. So
Tom Brady.
This is a great segue into the week run review. Thanks for sticking with me this far, fellas. I only have 2 more segments and then we'll get out of here. But the first week run review we have is on the Zac versus Nugget win. So some of the highlights: Zac won. It was a solid team effort across the board. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire did really well with 20.9 points and 2 touchdowns. We'll see if he can keep that up all year. Nick Chubb had 141 rushing yards. They were kind of the catalyst of your team. And then Travis Kelce being tight end 1, I think really helped you, along with Nugget not really showing up. Nugget had 2 goose eggs, Cam Akers and Mike Gesicki. Dak Prescott stunk up Sunday Night Football.
Gesicki had 1 catch for 1 yard.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Shout him out there.
I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. I did round down there. You are correct. Dak Prescott stunk up Sunday Night Football. Tony Pollard was part of that stinky Sunday Night Football game. And all 4 of those players combined for 7.5 points. So that really paints a picture as to how Nuggets week went. His kicker only had 1. I hate kickers, but I want to throw that out there. And the last point I have from this matchup is Justin Jefferson looks like Juan Soto on the Nationals. Get him out of there.
I think you were right about the toilet bowl bound. Nugget is on his way.
Yeah, there's only up from here. We'll say that, you know. Okay, so the next matchup I have is me versus Kyle. I hadn't finished this at the time because the Broncos were essentially my whole team. Zach pointed it out earlier. I have 3 Broncos players, so I'm literally going to ride or die with the Broncos this year. I did have AJ Dillon. He looks like probably my best pick. And AJ Brown also did really well, so might have to change my team name to something along the lines of the AJs. Jalen Hurts was Kyle's best player with 24.6 points. Miami's defense may make the difference in the overall result. That wasn't the case, obviously. I ended up winning. And then the last thing I have for it is Fournette isn't slowing down. He looked like the only good part of that Sunday night game.
He did look good. He's a big back and he's running downhill. He's hard to stop. He must be close to the same size as Derrick Henry.
Yeah, they're both big boys. They're big boys. Melvin Gordon's actually surprisingly big too. I was watching the game tonight too. He's tall.
Fournette is he was easily the most physical running back at LSU, 6 or 7, 8 years ago at this point. And I was surprised he didn't do better in the NFL right away.
Right.
Yeah.
But somehow he's kind of resurfaced as 130 yards and just kind of bludgeoned the Cowboys all night. So
yeah, I did take the win against Kyle. It was a really close game. We mentioned earlier 1 kick would have changed that, but happy to take the win there. The next matchup was Matt versus Mike, and Mike did win that game. Matty Will could have won that game had he started the best team. We mentioned that earlier that he left the most points on the bench, so had he chosen the best team, he could have won. Kareem Hunt went off on his bench. Kyle Pitts didn't show up. Rookie mistake. Matty Will starts DeAndre Hopkins in week 1. He is suspended for the first couple of weeks, so I think Matty Will may be having some hangover from last year where his season didn't matter very much.
Wait,
I don't think he started. Hopkins.
Yeah, he didn't start him.
Oh, okay. I apologize. He was on his starting roster when I made this, so I apologize. My apologies, Matty Will. My apologies.
He must have been trolling.
Yeah.
Allen Robinson was almost as close to starting Hopkins, but
yeah. So Mike won that game. He had a decent week. Antonio Gibson looked to be a great value pick for him. The Bills' defense was nasty for him. So was Pittsburgh. And then a good wide receiver showing overall. Tyreek Hill and Mike Evans combined for 26% of his total points. So that was good for him. Good win against Matt. I thought Matt was going to be a better team this year. He still has time to prove that, but good win for Mike. And then the next game I have is Nico versus Tmac. And Nico won by 3.7 points. It was a close game. It was led by Stephon Diggs and Joe Mixon. Diggs was the wide receiver 4, I believe, this week, so that helped him out a lot. T-Mac could have won with better starters, similar to Matty Will had he started the correct people. He left about 19 points on the bench to Nico's 12 points, so even if they both started the best team, Tom still would have won. And Tom was anchored by Patrick Mahomes at quarterback 1, Jonathan Taylor at RB2. A couple of goose eggs laid by Devontae Smith and Ish Smith Jr. that hurt you a little bit.
Irv Smith was a last-minute filler for George Hill's absence, and he goose egged me. Yeah,
so room for improvement for sure. I think Mahomes and Jonathan Taylor are going to be perfectly fine this year, so you'll be fine. The next matchup I have is Colton versus Jim. This is a good game. Jim ended up winning. Saquon Barkley is back with 29.4 points. Christian McCaffrey needs more touches, but he looks like he's going to be solid. Michael Pittman looks solid with 22.6 points. He's going to be good this year. And then Ryan Suckup was the difference maker, believe it or not, in this game with 15 points. I hate kickers, again. I'll emphasize that. Colton had Herbert and Cooper Kupp led his team with about half his points. Both players left a lot of points on the bench, but overall it was a good matchup. So Colton will be able to bounce back. He has a good team. And then the last game I have is Dan versus Brandon, who Dan won. He was the best team this week with the most points overall. Everyone on his team did well, to be honest with you. Jonathan Allen did well. Gabe Davis started him out on Thursday. Jamar Chase and DeAndre Swift both had great games, combining for 48 points between the two of them. And then ironically, or not ironically, but surprisingly, Miles Sanders had a great week. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, with the worst team for week 1, Brandon had the least amount of points. He had the second least points left on the bench. So not only did he have a bad starting lineup, he had a bad bench as well. And more glowing was he had no goose eggs. So he doesn't really have an excuse for players getting hurt or players not showing up. It was just an overall bad team this week.
Crazy, because he was slated to have
a
really good week and
Yeah, I think that
projected
was
to have really good running backs. And
yeah, Austin Eckler fell on his face for him. Aaron Jones didn't do well. Aaron Rodgers looked terrible. Najee Harris looked bad. So
I think that was the surprise of the week for me, because I think, wasn't your championship matchup Jim Brandon?
It was.
Austin? Didn't you have him? And
I did.
Yeah, I think
that was a bad prediction.
On paper, though, that team, like the backs, DK Metcalf, Aaron Jones at the flex, Aaron Rodgers is always reliable. So I don't think a single player scored double digits.
Yeah, he's always my arch nemesis.
Roster looks good. That was the surprise of the week for me.
Yeah, so we have 10 more minutes here. Getting into my week 2 matchups, I'll start with Brandon versus me. I mentioned earlier Brandon had a terrible week. He is my arch nemesis. He always has his best week against me. So he had the worst week last week, and I'm positive of it. He'll score 100 points this week. That's my prediction for that game. I have Nico versus Matt. Matty Will's looking for his first win, and Nico's looking to start 2-0. That'll be an interesting game. Hopefully Matty Will can fix some of his bench issues. I have Mike versus Chris in the Phillips Bowl, or the Collusion Bowl as we call it around these parts. Does Mike bury Nuggets playoff dreams? Possibly.
Hopefully.
Zach, over under on Nuggets running back scoring more than 10 points this week.
Does he get to pick any up?
Yes.
Over.
Okay. We'll do
like combined?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't mean to laugh so hard. I'm sorry.
If he puts one in his flex, he gets 15. Like an average of 5.
Oh,
right?
no. So his RB1 and his RB2, not his flex, just his first two running backs.
Well, I'll say over 10. I'll say over 10.
Okay. Then I have Tmac and Colton. Both teams looking solid after week 1. Both of them trying not to start 0-2. It's going to be a good matchup. They have Mahomes versus Herbert, so that Thursday night game is going to be important for them. Chiefs are playing the Chargers on Thursday night, so you'll have a painted picture on how that game's going to go after Thursday. Then I have Zach versus Dan. Emphasis on 3-letter names there in that game. Both strong starts.
Game of the week.
Possibly.
2 times in a row, maybe?
Possibly, we'll see. Like I said, both of you guys had strong starts. Both of them are trying to stay undefeated. One of them will not be undefeated after week 1. And the last game I have is Jim versus Kyle. Jim is looking to stay undefeated. Similar to Tom and Colton, this game has Kirk Cousins versus Jalen Hurts, which is the Monday night football game. So they will go into Monday night with 2 quarterbacks to play. That'll be interesting. Jim also has Dallas Goedert, so that'll be interesting as well. But that's all I have for you fellas today. Do we have any closing thoughts on college football? Tom, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I can just jump in on college football for like 2 minutes. Notre Dame is just abysmal, and we're just not going to talk about them for the rest of the year. I'm not going to text about them. They are like the Cowboys of football. Tyler Buckner's out for the year. Just hard to watch. But with that said, interesting stat that I wanted to share about the Sun Belt Conference, which you probably already saw.
Yeah,
but
please.
This past week, the Sun Belt East, so there's 14 teams in the Sun Belt. There's the East and West, 7 making up the East. In the East alone, Appalachian State beat Texas A&M, number 6 Texas A&M, at Texas A&M. Marshall beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame, number 8. Georgia Southern went to Nebraska and beat Nebraska at Nebraska.
Yeah.
And then the week prior, Old Dominion beat Virginia Tech. So the East of the Sun Belt is 4-0 against like
Top 25 teams.
amazingly historical, like top 10 teams,
Yeah.
and then like all-time powerhouse teams. So my point in all this is I want those teams in the lesser divisions to play tougher schedules, because I think there's more parity in college football than we like realize, and it'd be cool to see that playoff expand and maybe get some of these teams.
Yeah, I like that idea
in
of
the
the playoff.
field.
Well, it did expand. No, did they not bring in more teams?
Yeah, not.
So they're doing 4 now, right? Yeah, and then they'll do
4. They're gonna
12.
expand it to 12, and I
Yeah,
don't know
that'll be
exactly
nice.
how that will work. There'll be first round buys for the top 4 or something, but I just think it's neat that App State, Marshall, Old Dominion, and Georgia Southern all beat like traditional powerhouses from one side of the Sun Belt last week. So
Yeah, my cousin actually goes to Old Dominion, and he sent me a Snapchat of the aftermath of them winning, and it was absurd. Like, so
yeah, I mean those are great games. Those are like fantastic games to watch on TV. Upsets like that. I mean, the whole country gets behind upsets like that. So I'd like to see more of them televised and more opportunities for them to have them. And other than that, like, let's just cancel Notre Dame's NBC contract for a while. Notre Dame hasn't won since I've been in Tennessee. I don't know if they will. They're 0-3 in their last 3 games. Marcus Freeman looked like the hero.
It's funny you say that.
Already.
I'm not a big college football guy, but I have followed Notre Dame because I'm a friend of your family, right? And I'm sure Zach will like this point, but I watched the Manti Te'o documentary a few days ago, and I was just pumped up about Notre Dame. I watched that ending scene, I'm like, let's go, like it's time. And I was like, this year I'm going to follow them. And I think I may have jinxed them. I don't know what it is, but they have a black coach. I was really excited for that. Young black coach, right? Like everything was set up
so
well.
Much swagger going on.
I know.
Recruits are pouring in left and right.
Yeah.
And then they go and lose to Marshall at home in terrible fashion, and that's just story of the Notre Dame.
Well, I don't know if the spotlight shifts. Hopefully it does. Hopefully they're not expected to do much the rest of the season, and they're able to shine without the spotlight. We'll see how that goes, but I'm still going to watch Notre Dame. I'm sure you will too, and I'm hoping for the best.
Will. Thanks for my 2-minute Notre Dame soapbox. That'll be the last of it for the year.
So that's going to conclude episode number 2. I really appreciate you guys for being with me. For everyone watching, it is currently 2 a.m., I believe, Eastern Standard Time. So I appreciate these guys for being with me. We will catch you next week. Are there any closing thoughts from you guys?
I think game of the week is Zach versus Dan, the 2 highest scorers. Excited to see that. That's my last thought on fantasy.
Well, good luck this next week, you guys. I hope you guys win, and I will catch you on episode 3.
Oh, I will be providing some receipts of the shit talk I have for Dan. So,
yeah, we'll get a new name for that segment next week, and I'm sure I'll have some better things to pull. But moving forward, it'll be a better part of the podcast. Yeah.
Love it. Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Of course. We will catch you guys next week in episode 3, where Nugget will be 0-2 and fighting for his life. This has been the Scuchdown Report. Peace.